Recent diplomatic activities surrounding the Russia-Ukraine conflict have culminated in a notable declaration from U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Paris. Following discussions involving American, Ukrainian, and European officials, which generated outlines for potential peace steps, Secretary Rubio indicated that continued United States engagement in the peace process is contingent upon observing tangible progress within the coming days. He articulated that after months of unsuccessful efforts, the administration is approaching a critical decision point regarding the feasibility of achieving a resolution, suggesting a potential shift in U.S. focus if the current diplomatic track proves unproductive. This statement sets a distinct temporal marker for the next phase of negotiations, coinciding with separate, parallel advancements in securing a U.S.-Ukraine agreement related to access to Ukraine's significant mineral resources. Consequently, the upcoming meeting scheduled for London assumes heightened significance, identified by Secretary Rubio as the likely venue for determining the continuation of the Trump administration's direct involvement in these peace negotiations. The stated justification for this potential disengagement hinges on the assessment that the conflict is external to core United States interests and the existence of other pressing administration priorities, leading to the demand for a decision within days. This diplomatic posture unfolds simultaneously with advancements on an economic front, specifically the nearing finalization of a deal granting the U.S. access to Ukraine's extensive mineral resources, an initiative President Trump himself confirmed is progressing with a memorandum of intent now signed between Ukrainian Economy Minister Yulia Sviridenko and U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. This economic agreement, envisaging substantial investments and infrastructure modernization, represents a tangible U.S. interest pursued in parallel with the peace track, having overcome previous hurdles noted back in February 2024 following a contentious meeting involving Presidents Trump and Zelenskyy. Despite the expressed urgency and potential for withdrawal from the peace process, Secretary Rubio characterized the preceding Paris discussions as constructive, noting that no party overtly rejected proposals or abandoned the talks, and specifically crediting European partners from the United Kingdom, France, and Germany with facilitating forward movement. From Moscow, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov acknowledged the fairly complex nature of ongoing negotiations with the United States, affirming Russia's aim to resolve the conflict while securing its interests and maintaining openness to dialogue, though confirming no imminent direct talks between Presidents Trump and Putin. Russia's conditions for a comprehensive ceasefire, however, remain a significant sticking point, requiring a halt to Ukrainian mobilization and Western arms supplies, terms consistently rejected by Kyiv. Amidst these diplomatic exchanges, the operational reality on the ground persists, evidenced by continued Russian strikes on Ukrainian urban centers. Reports cite a recent cluster munition attack injuring nearly 100 civilians in Kharkiv, a fatal drone strike on a bakery in Sumy occurring shortly after a major Palm Sunday missile attack in the same city killed dozens, and an earlier April 4, 2024 strike claiming 20 lives in Kryvyi Rih. This backdrop of unrelenting hostilities informs growing concerns among European allies regarding potential shifts in U.S. strategic alignment towards Russia, particularly as the Paris meeting marked the first trilateral U.S.-Ukraine-Europe discussion on ending the war since President Trump's inauguration. Yet clarity on future security guarantees for Ukraine, especially regarding the crucial U.S. role, remains conspicuously absent from official U.S. statements. While Secretary Rubio conveyed a sense of potential diplomatic progress emerging from Paris, this assessment stands in sharp contrast to the explicit ultimatum issued regarding continued U.S. involvement, suggesting that perceptions of constructiveness are insufficient without imminent, concrete results. Furthermore, the description of ongoing, complex negotiations involving high-level envoys like Steve Witkoff meeting President Putin multiple times, alongside talks hosted in Saudi Arabia, paints a picture of sustained diplomatic machinery. Yet this activity directly confronts Moscow's unwavering preconditions for a ceasefire, namely, the cessation of Ukrainian mobilization and Western military aid, conditions fundamentally unacceptable to Kyiv, thereby illustrating a persistent deadlock despite the procedural engagements. The starkest contrast, however, lies between the carefully worded diplomatic acknowledgments from both Washington and Moscow and the brutal operational tempo on the ground. Reports of significant civilian casualties from Russian strikes in Kharkiv, Sumy, and Kryvyi Rih serve as a grim counterpoint to discussions about peace outlines, highlighting the profound gap between negotiation chambers and the battlefield reality. This juxtaposition raises critical questions about the relationship between the advancing bilateral economic interests, such as the U.S.-Ukraine minerals deal, and the conditional nature of U.S. commitment to the broader, multilateral peace process. Consequently, the expressed European anxieties regarding a potential U.S. rapprochement with Russia are amplified by the ambiguity surrounding future security guarantees for Ukraine, a domain where U.S. commitment is deemed vital by allies but remains undefined by the current administration, creating a climate of strategic uncertainty across the continent. Delving further into the dynamic, the pronounced emphasis on a rapid decision-making timeline by the United States introduces a significant pressure element into the negotiations. This approach, coupled with the explicit statement that the conflict is not our war, suggests a transactional framework where continued diplomatic investment is measured against perceived immediate returns or alignment with distinct American objectives, potentially separate from the core security concerns of European allies or Ukraine itself. The simultaneous pursuit and near completion of the minerals agreement, after overcoming previous obstructions, lends credence to an interpretation where tangible economic gains for the U.S. are prioritized, potentially serving as a more concrete deliverable for the administration than the more complex and elusive peace settlement. Such positioning inherently complicates the multilateral effort. While European partners are acknowledged as helpful in moving discussions forward, the overarching conditionality imposed by Washington creates uncertainty about the durability and ultimate aims of the U.S. commitment, irrespective of procedural successes like those reported in Paris. This complex interplay leaves fundamental questions unanswered regarding the alignment of strategic interests among the involved Western parties and the potential for divergent paths if the short deadline for progress imposed by Secretary Rubio is not met, especially concerning the critical issue of long-term security architecture for Ukraine. Looking beyond the immediate diplomatic maneuvering, the signaling effect of a potential U.S. withdrawal from the peace process carries substantial weight for the overall geopolitical landscape. Such a move, particularly when framed by the rationale of prioritizing other interests and declaring the conflict external to U.S. concerns, could be interpreted by Moscow as a lessening of American commitment to Ukraine's long-term sovereignty and territorial integrity, potentially altering Russia's strategic calculus in the ongoing conflict and future negotiations. For Ukraine, the prospect of diminished U.S. backing in the search for peace, especially regarding the unresolved issue of future security guarantees, inevitably weakens its negotiating leverage and raises profound concerns about its capacity to secure a durable and just resolution. Furthermore, this scenario risks exacerbating existing European anxieties about transatlantic solidarity and the predictability of U.S. foreign policy, potentially fostering divergent approaches among Western nations toward managing the conflict and relations with Russia. The explicit linkage between the peace initiative and the bilateral minerals deal also sets a precedent, introducing complex transactional dynamics into international security diplomacy that could influence future U.S. engagements globally. Therefore, the immediate focus shifts decisively towards the anticipated meeting in London next week, which Secretary Rubio himself has framed as a potential inflection point for continued American participation in the peace initiative. The outcome of this meeting and the subsequent determination by the Trump administration will likely depend on assessments made regarding the perceived tractability of the conflict resolution process within the constrained timeframe articulated, weighed against the administration's stated domestic and other foreign policy priorities. Concurrently, the successful signing of the Memorandum of Intent for the minerals deal provides a concrete achievement for the U.S. administration in its engagement with Ukraine, possibly influencing the calculus regarding the less certain peace negotiations. The persistence of intense hostilities, exemplified by the recent attacks causing numerous civilian casualties, complicates any diplomatic momentum and underscores the significant gap between negotiation frameworks and the operational environment. Ultimately, the decision reached following the London talks will set the immediate trajectory, either extending the current complex diplomatic engagement involving the U.S., Ukraine, European allies, and Russia, or signaling a significant shift in U.S. strategy towards disengagement from this specific peace effort, leaving the future dynamics uncertain. Consequently, the failure to achieve demonstrable progress within the specified short timeframe, as demanded by Secretary Rubio, directly precipitates the potential for the United States to cease its active role in brokering this specific peace arrangement. This conditionality, in turn, could influence the tactical approaches of both Kiev and Moscow. Ukraine might perceive increased pressure to make concessions without guaranteed long-term U.S. security backing, while Russia might interpret the potential U.S. shift as an opportunity to consolidate gains or maintain its maximalist demands, knowing a key external pressure point could be removed. The successful advancement of the U.S.-Ukraine minerals deal introduces another causal factor. Securing tangible economic benefits might reduce the administration's perceived imperative to invest further political capital in the complex and uncertain peace process, having already achieved a distinct bilateral success. Moreover, the unabated violence, evidenced by ongoing Russian attacks and resulting Ukrainian casualties, acts as a powerful impediment, eroding trust and making the political space for compromise required for near-term progress exceptionally difficult to achieve. Thus, the confluence of diplomatic impasse, divergent preconditions for a ceasefire, the pursuit of parallel economic objectives, and the harsh realities of continued warfare creates a situation where the conditions set by the U.S. for its continued involvement appear increasingly challenging to meet within the narrow window provided. In essence, the situation presents a convergence of factors: a United States administration imposing a strict temporal limit on its mediation efforts, explicitly tying continued involvement to rapid progress while simultaneously advancing separate national economic interests within Ukraine. This occurs against a backdrop of undiminished hostilities, entrenched opposing positions on ceasefire prerequisites, and pronounced European apprehension regarding strategic alignments and future security commitments. The declared U.S. readiness to potentially disengage introduces a significant variable, shaping the immediate diplomatic landscape and placing the onus of demonstrating progress squarely within a compressed, high-stakes timeframe leading up to the London assessment, leaving the broader trajectory of the conflict resolution effort contingent upon decisions driven as much by internal U.S. calculus as by the complex realities of the war itself. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis, and be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more geopolitical insights like this. I love hearing your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let's keep the conversation going. Share this video with anyone interested in deeper perspectives on current events. Until next time, stay informed and think critically. Thank you.